It was a cold, dry evening when Michael first noticed the strange feeling in the air. The kind of chill that clung to the skin, not from the weather, but from something far deeper. As a security guard for the sprawling American shopping mall, Michael had spent countless nights patrolling the hallways and corridors, always feeling the weight of solitude. But there was something about the basement parking that unsettled him, something he couldn't quite explain. The mall's basement parking lot was massive, more like an underground labyrinth than a place to park cars. Beyond the cars and their empty spaces, beyond the cracked concrete floors, there were areas that few people ventured into. The generator room, an old water tank, and the water supply motor had been down there since the mall was first built. Michael, having worked there for years, had grown accustomed to these areas, though he'd never fully understood them. Still, there were tasks only he could handle, checking the switches, inspecting the tanks, making sure the old machinery was working. And every time he went to the basement, something gnawed at him. He would feel the hairs on the back of his neck rise, his breath hitch, and an inexplicable weight on his chest, as though something was watching him. Yet, when he turned, there was nothing but shadows stretching along the grimy walls. It started innocently enough. He'd go to the basement to inspect the electrical panels or take a quick look at the generator, but he began to feel something odd, something too real to dismiss as imagination. The first time it happened was when he went down to reset the main breaker, which had tripped again. As he passed the massive water tank, he felt the air grow dense around him, as though the oxygen itself had thickened. His flashlight flickered, casting long shadows along the walls. He brushed it off, trying to focus on the task at hand. That's when he heard it. A faint sound, almost like a whisper. It was soft, barely audible, but it made his heart race. He stopped, holding his breath. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice echoing in the silence. No answer. Just the hum of the old generator and the distant sound of water running through pipes. Michael chuckled to himself, trying to calm his nerves. It was probably just a pipe groaning. Yet, as he turned to head back toward the stairs, he felt it. A cold gust of air, right behind his neck, followed by the distinct sensation of someone's breath. His skin crawled, his eyes widening in fear. But when he spun around, there was no one there. The feeling lingered as he hurried up the stairs and out of the basement. But it wasn't the last time. Over the next few weeks, it happened again. Each time he went into the basement, the feeling grew stronger. He felt like something, or someone, was following him. Sometimes it was just a soft breath on his neck. Other times, it was as if something was standing right behind him, so close he could almost feel the weight of it. It became impossible to ignore. One night, as Michael descended into the basement to check on the water supply motor, he felt the sensation again, this time more intense than ever. A cold breath ghosted across his skin, and he froze, his body stiffening. Slowly, as he turned toward the water tank, a sudden pressure gripped his neck. A vice-like grip, invisible, but so strong that he gasped, struggling for air. His vision blurred, the air growing thin, as if a force was closing in on his throat. Panicked, Michael stumbled forward, clutching at his neck, gasping for breath. His flashlight rolled across the concrete floor, illuminating the dark corner where the water tank loomed. That's when he saw it. A figure, pale and translucent, stood in the shadows by the tank. It was a woman, dressed in an old-fashioned white dress, her hair long and unkempt, hanging around her face like a curtain of wet strands. Her eyes were hollow, dark pits, staring right through him, and as she stepped forward, Michael could see her mouth open, but no sound came out. Only the cold, suffocating pressure remained. He backed away, terror surging through him, as the grip on his throat loosened slightly, enough for him to breathe, but not enough for him to escape. The figure raised a finger to her lips, as if urging him to be silent. He stumbled backward, his heart pounding, his legs trembling. "Please, "I just need to get out," he whispered, but she didn't respond. Suddenly, the basement lights flickered and went out, plunging everything into darkness. Michael's flashlight caught the last glimpse of her shadowy figure before it vanished, leaving behind only the chilling silence of the basement. Frantically, Michael raced up the stairs, not stopping until he reached the safety of the main floor. His chest heaved as he tried to steady his breath. He knew, deep down, that whatever it wasn't just his mind playing tricks. There was something in that basement, something old, something vengeful. The next few days were a blur of tension and fear. He tried to avoid the basement as much as he could, but the mall's operations demanded his presence there. The shadowy figure never left his mind, nor did the sense of being watched. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just being haunted by a spirit, but by someone who was trying to communicate with him, or worse, trying to make him a part of the shadows. It wasn't until a night shift, as he entered the generator room again, that Michael found a clue. He had grown desperate, researching the history of the mall, hoping to find an answer. Finally, he uncovered an old article from the mall's early days. It told of a tragedy, a woman who had worked in the basement, operating the water supply motor. She had died in an accident, crushed by falling machinery, and her body had never been recovered, left to decompose in the dark, forgotten corners of the basement. Michael felt his heart sink as the truth dawned on him. The spirit wasn't just haunting the basement. She was trapped by the machinery, the darkness, and the years of neglect. With this knowledge, Michael made a decision. The next time he went down to the basement, he had to do more than just run. He had to put her spirit to rest. Equipped with a flashlight, a few candles, and an offering of flowers, Michael descended back into the depths of the mall. As he approached the generator room, the cold air thickened. The whispering grew louder, as if the walls themselves were breathing. When he reached the water tank, he knelt down, placing the flowers on the cold concrete floor. He spoke softly. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. You're not forgotten." The temperature dropped further, and Michael's breath became visible in the air. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the shadow appeared again, but this time, it didn't come toward him. It hovered near the tank, its eyes fixed on the offering. Slowly, the grip on his neck loosened entirely. He felt the pressure lift, and the suffocating sense of dread faded. Then, just as quietly as she had appeared, the figure vanished. Michael stood still, his legs weak, his heart still racing. The basement felt different, less oppressive, less alive with fear. He knew then that he had done what was needed. The spirit could now rest. As he made his way back to the stairs, Michael took one last look at the basement. It no longer felt like a place of darkness, but one of peace, a peace he hadn't felt in years. The next morning, he reported the incident, and the basement was sealed off, transformed into storage. But for Michael, the memory of the basement and the breath on his neck would never leave him. He knew that sometimes the shadows weren't just made of darkness, they were made of unfinished business, and some spirits, no matter how forgotten, never truly leave.